Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with Simco Training. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I would start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Listen, I'm going to say today I'm joined with Andrew Clark again. Andrew Clark is our Operations Director for Simco Training, and you've probably already heard him on a few previous posts. But today we want to talk all things EV and everything around EV and how it's going to change the motor trade. So this is one of those podcasts that I'm really so keen to see where this conversation is going to go. How is it going to affect the modern motor trade? Specifically, we're talking about the UK, but we know we have lots of dealers listen to this in Ireland, Australia, America. And I think some of the subjects we're going to talk about is going to affect the whole motor trade globally. So welcome aboard, Andrew.
Evening, Sam. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Firstly,
Excellent.
Let's talk about the UK pay-per-mile charging system. I just want to get your views, Andrew. Do you think the proposed pay-per-mile charging system, is that going to actually accelerate? Or could it, in fact, hinder the adoption of electric vehicles in the UK market?
In fairness, when you think about the potential introduction of a pay-per-mileage charging system, for me, I actually strongly believe it could be a bit of a hindrance to the adoption of an EV market. I think it could discourage a lot of long-distance drivers, which could potentially then make EVs less attractive for the people who are living outside urban areas. And you go back to when, I suppose, if you go back to diesel introduction back in the 90s, there was a big push that way, and there was a big backlash at that point in time. This is something completely different. The government's looking at, certainly manufacturers and governments around the world are looking at two very different methods here. EV adoption, and we've seen quite a few early adopters in the marketplace. But now the UK government pushing a pay-per-mile charging system in the UK. How is that going to sit? Are EVs going to be actually less attractive all round at this point in time? Will people want to stick with their traditional cars? And if they're paying for it, let's stick to what we know. I'm really not sure. And I actually think there'll be quite a bit of public backlash to this as well. I think very likely to, if you look at ourselves, we drive 25, 30,000 miles a year.
Yep.
How's the impact on that? And we've had conversations around electric cars and could we use them? And we've both agreed we'd like to go to them.
Yeah, of course. But can we yet? Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's then going to be this big charging on top of it, because you've got to believe there's a huge revenue gap coming around the corner. And that's probably where this UK pay-per-mile is going to come from, because if we're going to have more and more of our drivers going to EV cars, and where's the fuel tax going to come from? Where's the revenue going to come from?
The fuel tax is the big one, okay? They're losing out that revenue. They have to do something. Pay-per-mile, I get it. They're trying to replace it, but it's going to have an impact on high mileage users, but also public's opinion towards EVs. Surely that must be a concern about, hold on, the affordability. How many people are going EV now because it is more affordable, but in one fell swoop, does that affordability go out the window?
Yeah. I think there's more to it than that as well. If I just move away slightly, the technology in EVs there and probably would enable with trackers and systems, because how do the government, how do DVLA or whoever's going to monitor this system, how do they track it? Is that going to be something that's going to be inbuilt with technology in the cars, and therefore people are going to be even more concerned about pushing back?
Yep.
Will there be a line in the sand, a watermark, like almost a kind of that real defining moment when they say, right, every car that gets registered in the UK now must have a tracker that's linked to DVLA's database?
Yep.
But they're then watching every journey.
Yes.
The speed you're doing. Is it too much Big Brother watching? And actually, will that slow the implementation of EV market and push it back further as people reject it and don't want to go that way?
You're dead right, because I've just had to do one of those naughty boy speed awareness courses. And if they have to track our pay-per-mile, they're tracking our speed, they're tracking everything we're doing. And it's kind of like one step towards full autonomy, I suppose. There's something I heard on another podcast recently, and I think they're probably right, but sent a shiver down my spine. They said the last person ever to get a driver's license has probably already been born. I went, oh, hold on, that can't be true. But actually, maybe it is. If we're going down that autonomous vehicle, actually, if someone's just been born in 2024, by the time they're at driving age, let's say 17, 18, are they going to need a driver's license? Now, I don't know, but this is where, is it the first step towards something like that? Again, naughty boy speed awareness course, that's where I was thinking about tracking us there. How are they going to do that?
Yeah, but if you look, EU mandate is part of our UK automotive section. There was a big mandate coming in around technology, speed limiters, speed warning systems in cars. I had the pleasure of borrowing a car from one of our clients at the weekend because my car was in for service. And that car, in my wife's words, is so annoying because it flashes at you every time you go over the speed limit.
Yep.
And she went, I wasn't speeding, I was only doing 3 miles over, but every single time the car chimed and bumped, pulled her back in lane, and she hated it. But that's
Yeah.
the first part of
Yeah. Now, again, we
coming
know
around.
it can be switched off, and there's so many different things you can go in and show in the menu, but I get where she's coming from. I think Sarah's dead right because it's just one of the things that I hire a car lots, as you know, we travel lots,
Yeah.
and it's like switch all this stuff off. How many people still switch off active lane departure warning systems and when they jump in the car? I must admit, I'm one of them. I probably shouldn't do, but I am one of them.
Yeah, it's crazy because even come down here today, I'm a big advocate for lane keep assist. I'm for advanced warning braking, especially the miles that we do. But
Mm.
actually, when you talk about the people that we work with day in, day out, some of the sales execs that we train, if you sat them in a room and asked for a show of hands who likes this technology, 95% of them say they hate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're showing the customers how to turn it off, which is even more scary.
Well, again, we started talking about the paper mile charging system. I get all the concerns with it. I don't know what the alternative is. I don't know. I imagine the government saying this is a fair way to do it, but it really needs to be thought through exactly how that policy is going to really affect the spread of EVs there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, talking about that, moving on, we know the government ZEV mandate. Okay. This year, I understand that the ZEV mandate requires that 22% of car sales will be zero emission. Are the manufacturers ready for this? And again, it depends on manufacturer to manufacturer because people are starting from a different starting point, aren't they? With how clean they were already. And I think it's almost penalizing some of the people that were clean already. Some of the people who were high emitters, they had more time. But I want to get your views. How are manufacturers ready for this for 2024? And by the way, people listen to this. We're recording this in August of 2024.
Yeah, I go back, my experience with it. I know Volkswagen Group, or certainly Volkswagen as a brand, were working on this back in 2017. They rolled out a general conference, a world conference in Munich, where they rolled out 9 cars on the stage, which were completely electric cars. And that was their ID range, where they went ID3, ID4, ID5. There was an ID6, ID7, the ID Buzz, and they had a full range. They just come out the back of Dieselgate, and they were looking to change their the projection of, and I suppose the public image of the brand as well. Then you go to Kia. Kia have got a phenomenal range with EV3 just been launched and no great acclaim. EV6 was a phenomenally successful car for them. EV9's come out, and they're well ahead of the curve. So there are certain manufacturers, they've got it. They've kind of grasped it, and they're doing very, very well off the back of it. But other manufacturers might have one EV in the lineup. They might not have gone the full adoption. And we know if you look at some of the deals that are out in the marketplace today, they're certainly telling me that they're panicking. They're almost looking at the panic button and doing deals which you're buying cars which you would never necessarily afford to buy. So we talked earlier about can the general public afford to go EV route? Well, there's some manufacturer pushing such phenomenal deals down the pipeline because they're scared not to hit the EV mandate. Because if they don't hit it, there's a £15,000 fine by the UK government for every ICE car registered. Now, for some manufacturers, they can't do it. Ford, for example,
yes, Ford.
Fiesta's now no longer part of the model lineup.
Yeah.
That car sold hundreds of thousands of units, was the UK's #1 selling car. It's been wiped out from the marketplace, followed very quickly by the Focus, which was probably, I think, the third or fourth best-selling new car in the UK marketplace. So some manufacturers are actually cutting models to actually make their EV share greater. And I think Mercedes-Benz as well, they have quite a strong electric offering. They've got A-Class. They're 22,000 registrations down year on year.
22,000. I'd love to talk about Mercedes and how much is it. Some people would say, is it agency, or is it they've just lost vehicles they could sell?
I was challenging it, but they've lost vehicles they can sell. A-Class was a huge success for the brand. But if you have all those cars getting pumped out and they're ICE, they're hybrid, they're plug-in hybrid, and they're not electric, they're opening themselves a potential of a £15,000 fine for every car they sell. Now, actually, if you were sat in the towers in Stuttgart or Munich, or would you not want to be pressing the pause button to say, what do we do with it? Because if you can't achieve it through generalists, do you stop?
The boat's coming. Well, you stop the boat's coming. Okay, so if you look at some of the Japanese brands and so forth, if we take Honda, for example, and it'd be great if we have someone in Honda UK to talk about this, but they have one EV vehicle, I understand. Look at the deals they did on that twice this year. I think they've just decided we need to go and get it now. Let's just get there. And listen, what could you get that NYE1 for? Is that how I pronounce it? The Honda postcode car. Okay, sorry, the guys from Honda UK, you're going to hate me saying that. But I mean, the deals they had on that was you could get them $199 a month on a PCP, and they flooded the market. In fact, I was in a Honda dealership today, speaking to someone very successful, Honda Group. And they turned around and said, you know what, everyone's concerned about that vehicle and range anxiety. It's not good enough. And we compared to the competitors, we just can't do it. They supported it with a huge finance deposit contribution, a huge FTA, whatever it was, okay? And when they're doing it for like, I think it was $199 or $229 a month or something like that, that thing sold out in a week. So I'll tell you what, have they devalued that? I worry about that car in 3 years' time, when the customer's used to that $229 a month, and we try and re-deal that customer. Goodness me, that's going to be a hard conversation, isn't it?
It's going to be a challenge. But the other thing I get as well now is with that deal, and I was with a different Honda group, and we were talking about this deal because it actually looked phenomenally good, and they've gone to 0% finance, huge FD. I think it was £10,500 was mentioned to me.
Wow, was it that much? Wow. Okay.
£10,500 FDA from one of the dealer groups. But they're almost now selling the deal first, the deal second, and the deal third. And customers are coming in looking at Honda Civics, and they're going, you don't want a Civic, you look at the deal on this. And you're right. I think because the deal's so strong, we're now no longer talking about the customer's wants and needs. We're not talking about their journeys. We're not talking about what they're going to use the car for. Look at this deal. That's a challenge as well, I think.
Hey, let's play devil's advocate. At least those people now have got a home charger. Okay, so they're on the EV. Yes. And I think that's a big part of it. When you look at the figures, how many people go EV again? I do think people have invested in the infrastructure. Now, it's not the end of the world there, but they've invested in infrastructure. So, well, we may as well go again for it. And also, maybe they said, you know what? I never thought EV was right for us, but we hardly ever do more than 350 miles a year. This is absolutely sensational. We charge it at night. We can charge at home, and it works. But again, I still think getting people out of that $229 a month, that's going to be that challenge.
But that's a drug. If you go to another manufacturer, we look for manufacturers before COVID were pushing market share, and their success was based on market share rather than dealership profit. It was something that definitely pre-COVID. And in the JLR world, they were pushing out E-Pace for $299, XEs for $299. There was lots of deals around there pushing market share. Now that brand successfully converted themselves into a very profitable brand, and those cars doubled in price, but they didn't lose any customers. I don't know if that would be the same with the EV world. I think now as they come back in and that doubles in price, that might be more of a challenge.
Well, listen, let's talk about the high-end luxury. Jaguar. Jaguar reduced all their dealers down to, I think it's 20 dealers or something like that. Their new all-EV range, I mean, they're only EVs and the new range is coming out, was meant to be end of this year. I understand that, and this is yet to be released, but I understand that they're not going to do it until 2026 now. Don't quote me on that. You've got a brand that's not going to have anything to sell for 12 months. Do you think the legislation, the ZEV mandate, has really pushed that? Because, of course, it's JLR. Or are they just trying to reposition the brand completely?
I've got to say, we'd be taking a great guess at this, and I'd love to get inside of the heads of the top guys, you know, the Adrian Models at JLR, to understand that movement. However, if you think about it, I think there's got to be a combination of both. There was that desire to reimagine the brand, you know, modern luxury, take Jaguar back to the good old age where Jaguar was really that pinnacle of the automotive sector.
Yeah.
And they want to go back there, and you understand it. But I think the ZEV mandate might have accelerated that transition.
Yeah.
I think talking to some of the guys in the network, I think it's about end of October, beginning of November. There will be no more new Jaguar product. They will be all registered, and that's done now until certainly the back end of 25, beginning of 26, before the next new car become available. So yeah,
and not a cheap car.
Brand.
I understand the first car comes out, not a cheap car at all. Is that right?
It will be a unbelievably luxury, full electric, a super saloon. It's going to be an awesome piece of kit.
Really fighting with the Bentleys of the world again, not competing. Because I
fighting
say,
back in the
yeah. Listen, you know, we work with JLR dealers, okay, and the brand perception from customers is Land Rover would definitely be more of a desirable brand than Jaguar. And if we wound that back to, I don't know, 40 years, when did Land Rover first launch? But that was never the case, was it? It was, take it back 30 years ago, it was completely the opposite way around. That has changed, hasn't it? So maybe they need to do something with that brand because it's such an iconic brand that doesn't enjoy the position it probably should do.
Yeah, but again, go back to the ZEV mandate. Could you ever have 22% of registrations in the Jaguar world being just purely I-Pace? They probably could never actually adopt or hold that strategy to make the ZEV mandate work.
Yeah, be interesting.
Real challenge. But the other fear for me as well is Volkswagen Group. The chairman of Volkswagen, just this beginning of this week, he actually announced to his colleagues in Germany that they literally have the next 2 to 3 years to turn that brand around. You know, Audi have already mothballed an EV plant. They're talking about production restrictions. They're talking about cost savings for the brand to survive. I think this is having a huge impact globally, not just in our UK economy. And I think the way that the market's moving, I am fearful for some manufacturers.
Yeah, there's going to be a change. I want to talk about globally and the Chinese brands in a second, but before we get that, this is again UK based. Kia Starmer now is at number 10. We know that there's lots of changes already. We can't get too political here, but there's lots of pensioners there might be unhappy with the winter fuel allowance there. I think he's doing that. So when he goes and raids capital gains and so forth, he's saying, I'm taking money out of everyone's pockets, to be fair. Look, I did it with the pensioners first. I'm guessing. I can't get into his head. But if Labour reintroduces the 2030 ICE car ban, because of course it's 2035, he did say in the past he wanted to reintroduce the 2030 ICE ban. What effect do you think that's going to have on our industry in the UK? Okay, especially the traditional manufacturers. Can they make 2030? That's not long away. It's really not.
It's really not. And if you look, the rest of the EU are still on the 2030 trajectory. So I think European manufacturers have been working to it, but they are now lobbying the EU government to push that ban back to 2035 because they're not going to be ready. If the UK then is a standalone 2030 ban and the rest of the EU go 2035, I think you will find the selection of consumer choice in the UK market exceptionally limited. There'll just be cars not turning up here.
And UK is 2035 currently. Is most of Europe 2035 as well, or are they already 2030? Sorry, I'm not sure.
So, yeah, the rest of Europe is currently 2030. Okay. The previous government under Rishi Sunak pushed that ban back to 2035.
Okay. Forgive my English. I thought the whole of Europe was 2035 as well.
No,
okay.
They're looking now, trying to push that target back to 2035, just to give this a chance to get. We have to have the right technology. We have to have the infrastructure. Now, again, the continent. I had a friend of mine who drove across to France in his BMW iX, and he said the infrastructure in France was phenomenal. The cost of charging was just so easy. The pulling a service station. He actually is a huge EV advocate, but he struggles when he gets back to the UK because normally that car's just driven around the Middlesbrough area and Teesside. And he said if he has to go to London, he'll actually jump in one of his old cars or get on the train.
Yeah.
The EV just doesn't work in that way.
Well, listen, Andrew, you live up that way. We've had this conversation so many times and you said it right at the beginning of this podcast. We'd both like to go EV. We're just one change cycle away from it, I think. We just need a slightly better infrastructure, and it's actually what you get charged in hotels. Okay, 69 pence per kilowatt. It's if you can charge at home, it makes so much sense. But if you've got to travel away and stay away, that's where that hurts, I suppose.
I have this conversation quite a lot when I'm out about in the dealerships that we work with and different manufacturers, and amazingly, everyone that I talk to about it always say the same thing: Andrew, it just won't work for you. You know, and there's one dealer group would give their team an electric car if they were a senior exec or they'd hit the targets, and it was actually given as a real incentive for them to drive the car because the car was always charged, they saved them on fuel, and they love driving it. But they all say it just won't work for you.
Sean Kelly from the Vines Group. I just bought a car for Emma, my wife, from him. Sean, good advocate of the show, been on here a lot, and client. Sean, I said, I need to change my 3-liter diesel BMW. I'm out of warranty now. I need to make a change. And he said, Skip, the miles you're doing, you need an oil burner. And Sean is one of the most cut him in half advocate about EVs. We learned so much from Sean, okay, about don't talk about range anxiety, talk about how many hours you're in the car in the morning. 45 minutes. You got plenty of time. Okay. And simple little things there. But he said, Skip, you got to go an oil burner. You absolutely have to. But tell you what, 2030, I might not be able to.
Well, actually, you say 2030, you might not be able to. It's 2024 now.
Yeah.
So could you go and replace your 530D?
I can't.
With another 530D.
Impossible.
I think that shift's happening.
It's happened, definitely for me. And you know how many times it's like, what do I go into? I'm struggling with that exact thing there, which is strange. But I tell you what, it's interesting about if this comes in. You mentioned about the technology that that some of the traditional brands have. I've got to say, the Chinese brands, they seem to have a lot of the technology. With the established manufacturers facing increasing regulations, restrictions, surely the Chinese EV brands, are they going to come in and clean up in the UK market? Are they starting to come in and clean up in the UK market already?
Let's have a look at MG. MG, a synonymous British brand, known for its sporty heritage. They have nearly surpassed Mercedes-Benz in registrations this year.
Wow.
Which is a phenomenal, and their brands are the cars that are coming across. The new MG3 is a phenomenal little hybrid car with hybrid technology. MG4's got a great range, and its entry point and price point is phenomenally good. And the cars that are coming through from MG now are exceptionally strong. There was something in Autocar last week that the MG brand, within the next 24 months, all their cars will have solid state batteries, capable of almost doubling the current range they have in the cars and halving the charge time.
Wow.
So you said one cycle away from that, for the car working for us.
Yeah.
The Chinese have the technology coming around the corner across the hill, and it will be here before we know it.
Well, I just go back a stage. You're an investor listening to this, because we know we have lots of investors listening to this. Think about the investment a Mercedes dealer has to put into compared to MG. I don't know what the MG investment is, but I've got to tell you what, selling a similar number of units to Mercedes, that's an eye-opener, isn't it?
Yeah, it's frightening. And the range as well. It's a fraction of the size of the range. So there's more cars getting put on the road. And let's be honest, I'd drive an MG today. I
Yeah.
think it's a great car.
Yeah.
But it's not just MG. You've now got BYD, which is a phenomenally strong brand. It's a premium brand that's coming to the UK. And I think for the first time this year, I believe it has matched the volume of Tesla. Another very strong American brand. But BYD are the biggest manufacturer of batteries globally. And start building cars. So when you look at the technology they have, it's crazy. But on the flip side of that, it might hit the price conscious consumer in the UK marketplace, but I still think there's that little bit of pushback for being a Chinese brand. I've been in insurance before where you've got Aura coming in, the brand, and they've got some phenomenal good cars coming. And when you talk to customers and they find that it's a Chinese car, they almost say, oh, no, not for me. Why should that be? It's quite a crazy thing because they were probably in the showroom holding an iPhone, which is made in China.
Yes.
Watching an LG TV, which is, probably made in China. And lots of technology
but
that
yeah. Oh, no, maybe. No, that's Samsung, isn't it?
it could be made, but it's certainly that there'll be so much comes from there. But the minute you said the car comes from there, oh no, that's not for me.
Well, even Elon Musk. Okay, I don't know when he actually said this, but I've seen it on social media. It pops up all the time. Someone asked him, "Oh, what do you think about BYD?" And bear in mind that BYD, they were working with Tesla on battery technology for a long time. They get them there. He started laughing. He said, no, we don't see BYD as an issue. And she said, really? She said, no, why not? He said, have you seen their cars? I mean, and he almost belittled it. It kind of reminded me the story about Netflix was offered for sale to Blockbuster Video. And the guy from Blockbuster Video said, you're kidding me. They're not even on our radar. And I thought, oh, Elon, you're a genius. You've done lots of things. You've built a very successful business. But I've got to say, BYD absolutely was not. I don't know how many years ago he said that about BYD, but they were definitely coming for him.
And again, if you look at the quality of the product, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Stylish, quality, range. So there's a lot coming over the hill. But it's crazy to think if we go back. My dad's got a great story about Chinese, and this is a ridiculous story that my dad worked within the intelligence service, shall we say. And at one point, the intelligence service had an assignment to watch all the new Chinese takeaways opening in the UK because the British government were paranoid that every Chinese takeaway, they were all spies and they had the capacity to poison the entire UK. And
wow.
I think there might be a little bit of that of the older generation still holding out of that kind of the Chinese car I'll be listening to us. So for me, I just think we embrace it. We take on the technology. We know we're living in the world of globalization. There's artificial intelligence. We're living in a different world today. But yeah, just go back. And that was probably only about 50 years ago.
Wow. That's amazing. Listen, I'm going to go down Pat Casey's line on this one. He has 3 Chinese brands, as well as Korean brands and Japanese brands. And when he has his salespeople having a go about the Chinese brands and what or speaking to a customer, he said, "Hey, Mr. Customer, remember when we used to always in Australia, that's where he's based, it was Ford and Holden, they were the 2. Then come along these Japanese cars, and people are like, oh, not sure about them. But then they started building cars that were better built, better reliable, cheaper. They sort of cleaned up. Then the Koreans come along, okay, and when they start off, remember the what was it, the pony? Was it something like that?
At the time, it would have been called the Hyundai Pony, but
that's it. Sorry, that's the one. That's the one. That's it. And it was almost not a joke, but then, tell you what, didn't they just overtake the Japanese now? Okay, I mean, the Japanese overtook the traditional brands. Then now, actually, are the Chinese just doing? It's the same playbook that Japan used, Korea used. The Chinese are saying, "Look, that's what we're going to do." I can say they're doing it. They're absolutely doing it. Be very, very interesting to see that. But we do have to talk about tariffs. And are tariffs coming on the Chinese because of that nervousness about what UK and Europe we need to talk about there. So these tariffs on these Chinese electric vehicles, I want to get your views firstly on, is it the right thing that Europe should put tariffs on these Chinese cars? And as I understand, every Chinese brand hasn't got the same tariff. Okay, there's
Yes.
there's different tariffs have been put on if they kind of like them or not. I can't get my head around that one. I'm not quite sure how that's worked. Okay.
From my understanding, it was a little bit deeper than it depends on if this Chinese state are involved with the brand. So I think if you look at
Right.
MG and SAIC Motors, I think they're majority sharehold by the Chinese authorities and the Chinese government. So therefore, because they're state owned, they have a higher tariff.
Right.
If you look at models like BYD, which are almost privately owned within the sector, they have a lower tariff because they're not linked to the state. That was my understanding. I could be completely wide of the mark, but it would make more sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So what do you think? UK government, we're not in Europe at the moment. Okay. Sorry, at the moment. We're definitely not in Europe. I don't think that's going to change anytime in the next 100 years. That's done as done. Okay. But what effect do you think is going to happen post-Brexit? We need to talk about that. Are we going to have the same tariffs on it? What's that effect going to be to us when we want to sell Bentleys, Jaguars, JLR product into China, big market?
yeah.
Do you think we're going to get into this tariff, or could it be a tariff war?
There is potential, and are the tariffs almost trying to protect our mainstay European brands? Is that why they've come back to with it? That it's protecting the old guard? I don't know. I think that we would be put under pressure as the UK to adopt and follow the EU because if you think about Ireland, an area where we work, a market that we work in, their cars potentially, in the case of MG, could be 36% more expensive in Ireland than they would be in the north.
Yeah.
And actually, that disparity is going to be huge for the market share and the marketplace. And we already said that. I think the consumer-led, conscious consumer who's very price-driven, if those cars now become 36% more expensive, and that's 36% more expensive on the monthly payments, 36% more expensive to buy the car, will they still go for that choice?
Well, that opens up a bigger picture, okay? EVs. My mother-in-law, because we're putting Emma into a electric vehicle, and it's right for her, the mileage she does. And my mother-in-law said, and sorry to talk about my mother-in-law like this, but she's saying, well, hold on, it's right for some people there, but people can't afford an electric vehicle. And I just thought, well, hold on, that's because a lot of people can't afford a brand new car. That's why we have a used car market, which is established and it's been going for a long time. Actually, we need more of these EV vehicles in the used car market to drive that, which will happen over time. We're selling more new cars. There's going to be more choice. But I suppose what I'm driving at is there going to be a backlash towards expensive EV models if the new ones keep going up? How many people can afford them? Is also these new cars coming in, are they just going to be like iPhones, where very quickly, I want the new one that comes out, the battery that can charge half the time, double the distance? Is an electric used car a throwaway product? Are those cars going to get to 10 years old?
Yeah, great question. I was actually having a meal with a good friend of mine last week, and he works in the finance sector. So he works for a big finance broker, and we talk about EV product and almost the throwaway generation of the car. What is its life shelf? If you have a 10-year-old car and the battery goes, is that cost too expensive to replace? Is that car now essentially a total loss? Is it gone? Is it a commodity you get rid of? And I'd certainly say anyone looking at an EV car today is you'd have to either lease it or put on a PCP, because then someone else is taking that risk. You're moving that risk of what happened in the market to the technology to somebody else. But he said out of his 26 lenders, some are very mainstream, some are very niche. He only has 2 lenders in the market that will actually fund a used EV.
Wow. Because of that issue.
Because that
Yeah.
out of those lenders, one will do a PCP.
Wow. So say that again. Have I got this right? There's only one used PCP. that he's
So he's a
dealing?
used car broker,
Yep.
and the lenders he has, there's only one will do a PCP.
Okay.
And the sources that he has access to will not touch PCP on your electric at all, and most of them won't even fund an electric car. Now
Interesting.
that to me is a frightening stat, because when you're talking about that commodity, is it a throwaway asset? Potentially, maybe some of the brokers are looking at, or some of the lenders are looking at going, it's a risk too far.
Well, this is where lots of people are saying, what is the future of EVs? Okay, electric prices going up, concern about the sustainability, if I can say that word, of producing the batteries there.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a push from the government at the moment. Is this path sustainable? Now, I've got to tell you, I thought at some point there, we'd all be in hydrogen. Sorry, I thought by now we'd all be in hydrogen vehicles, okay, biofuel. So I want to get your views, and I don't want to be a Jeremy Clarkson of the world and saying, no, it won't happen, and let's go back. In fact, on this podcast, we interviewed someone probably about 12, 18 months ago, and he said, never in a million years are electric vehicles ever going to get to that situation there. And I just thought, you're wrong. These manufacturers are developing these cars. It's something like, what, 7 years cycle to develop a car to bring it to the market. We're going to have these out there, okay? But long term, do we see the future in EVs? Are we going to go to biofuels? Are we going to go into hydrogen vehicles?
It's a great question. You've got certain manufacturers throwing the hat firmly in the EV marketplace, solid state batteries, advancing technologies in the future. And we have an infrastructure being built around that currently. So you'd have to say in the medium to long term, yes, EV has a future. But then you have the chairman of Toyota coming out in cooperation with BMW, and they're showcasing their hydrogen technology now.
Yeah.
They have got hydrogen cars in the marketplace, and they don't believe that electric is the future. I think there's a part of their business will always have an electric model, but that EV stroke hydrogen hybrid model will probably be the long-term future. But then go back to what we said at the start of the podcast. Will we have cars that we drive, or will we have driverless cars that we share? We don't know what the long-term future is going to be.
Yeah, driverless cars we share. You know that we go to the NADA conference, and you do learn so much there. And one of the conferences I always like is what's the future going to be in? And they pick a date in the future. And one guy said, yeah, sure. You might only use your car for 1% of the day. Okay, so share it with other people there. But our car isn't just used for 1% of the day, because we keep our suit hanging up in the back of it. You keep it there, so if you need to get back home and pick the kids up from school because they're ill quickly, it's there at the drop of a hat. You have your music in it. I know Adam has his golf clubs in the back of his car all the time there. It's almost your personal locker. And the way he explained it to me is, sure, I might only use my toothbrush for 1% of the day. Am I ready to share it with someone else? I don't know. No, there's certain things you just want yourself. And it's so the driverless cars, I could have this completely wrong, but I hope that doesn't happen. Now, if I lived in London, fine. Okay. But I still think we love ownership of a tin box that moves us around from one place to the other.
I get that. You know, I'm an absolute massive car nut. I'm a petrol head of the highest order. But interestingly, most manufacturers talk about the future of mobility rather than ownership.
Yeah.
And that tells me that they're probably looking 25, 30 years ahead, and maybe when our generation has, stopped driving. Is that like the 70-year-old today? Is that the last driving license we're going to see? You don't know.
Yeah.
The future mobility could be completely different. But we're talking about hydrogen technology. We're talking about solid state batteries. We're talking about technology that even 7 years ago wasn't on our radar.
Yeah.
It's changing and adapting at such a massive pace. Will it be will it be personal helicopters that come pick you as a taxi?
Yeah.
Will it be
drones that will come and get you?
Yeah.
I think it'll be a mixer. But one thing I will say, I do remember when the quartz watch came out. And now listen, I'm 51 years old now. So there was talk that, the quartz watch, the Seikos, all that, they're going to take over. And the Swiss watch companies were really upset about it. Okay. Concerned, not upset, concerned. So Swatch come out and so forth. But I tell you what, didn't Rolex still do all right? People still like that automatic watch. There's something about that mechanical side as humans we like. And I do believe we love ownership.
We
as
do.
humans.
But again, I think actually this is a great thing. My everyday watch is a Chinese Apple watch.
For people who
And
listen
it
to
works.
this, he has his watch on, but I know you have a lovely collection of watches as well, sir.
We do. But this is my daily watch. This is what I use for work. This is what monitors the heart rates and times and steps. And at the weekend, I did a mammoth challenge for myself. And my watch ran out of battery at about 16 miles into a walk because I was tracking my time, my steps, and everything like that. But the most interesting that happened, my watch buzzed and it went 10% battery left. I'm thinking, God, no, I've got another 4 hours left to walk. I've got another 8 miles. I want to track every step. The guy who was walking behind me, who was nothing to do with this because there was about 2,500 was doing this hike, his watch buzzed at exactly the same time.
Wow.
And if you look down the line, there was people at the watch going, oh, I've only got 10% left. So I think we're in this cycle now for our watches.
Yeah.
We're going to be in a cycle for our cars. It's going to happen. It is going to happen.
Listen, I suppose there's nothing. Normally, I love to finish these episodes off by saying, hey, if you're a dealer today, you're a sales manager, what would you focus on right now today? This conversation is, I don't think there is an answer. I think we just need to watch, see what's happening. Okay. I think there's still going to be a space for dealers at some point out there. They might be called retailers. They might be agency model. I believe that there might be electric, hydrogen, biofuel mix. There might be self-driving cars. There might be enthusiast cars. But I believe that, you know what, we're salespeople. We're always going to be needed. I really do think.
I'm going to say, to echo that, I think the biggest thing that we can do as a retailer or as a dealer network to challenge it, I think we need our sales teams prepared, engaged, and really behind the electric revolution. I think if they have the understanding, the knowledge, you talk about Sean Kelly at the start again, talking about it's not how long it takes to charge or the range anxiety, it's actually how many hours a day do you drive. If we had all our salespeople and all our businesses working along those lines, with confidence, I think that could also help shift the electric car.
Yeah.
I think that could help shape the future of our automotive sector.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. Let's watch this space, as I say. Listen, Andrew,
Yeah.
I really, I love these conversations because I don't know the answers. I don't know where it's going, but it's, I'll tell you what, it's interesting to see where it's going there. One thing's for certain, there's going to be lots of change over the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
Listen, thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sam. You have a good evening. See you soon. That
just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.